I recently posted this particular set as a TikTok video. The idea behind this was to showcase what it's like to reach true muscular failure, or to train beyond conventional concentric failure. So ideally using a heavy load to reach concentric failure rather quickly, and then continuing that set with forced reps. That's the only way that you're going to be able to continue full ROM. You know, the set will then drop to partials without those, and then eventually getting to the point where you reach eccentric failure, or it's certainly very difficult to control the eccentric phase of movement, which is the strongest phase, thereby reaching or getting as close to true muscular failure as possible. Now, of course, the TikTok Anti-Fatigue crew come out in the mass and start leaving comments about fatigue, and it all gets a little bit monotonous, a bit tiresome to read the same old stuff from people that don't really have much practical experience. And ultimately, little do they know that in 2 or 3 years, when a new batch of studies come out that the social media influencers base their content upon, they'll be influenced into training a different way. You know, it's cyclic in nature. I mean, you got a guy here saying that I didn't even reach muscular failure. It's just ridiculous. People don't think before they comment, unfortunately. He's not aware that I'm actually coming in for those force reps before I stall, before I reach the sticking point on that machine. Without that, I would have only got 4 and maybe 2/3 of a rep, but I'm coming in before it starts to grind, before that sticking point. And that's the best way to spot. If you have the luxury of training with someone as a lifting partner, you always want them to spot just before that point, just before you stall and reach that sticking point, because you want to keep the momentum of the set going. You don't want to have to kind of stall and then grind your way through it, because you'll lose the tempo of the rep, and ultimately you'll achieve less reps in the totality of that set. So I'm going to play some of these clips on loop. I want to talk a little bit now about fatigue and why it's not as straightforward as some people think. Just as a quick reminder, guys, I do offer online coaching. Prices start from £60 a month. If you're someone that's maybe been training for a while, that puts a lot of energy and time into the gym, but doesn't feel they have the physique that reflects that, I can definitely help you out. I promise to take your physique from a beginner level to an intermediate level within 6 to 9 months of working together. Let me know if you're interested. Links in the description box down below. Fatigue is a dynamic thing. It's ever fluctuating within your training journey. And it becomes difficult to manage sometimes, but maybe for other reasons outside of training that you don't have any ability to control, like work, for example, your sleep quality. If you've got kids, you have to get up for early at work. If you have a manual labour job, you're going to incur a huge amount of fatigue from this. So it doesn't really make much sense to worry about fatigue generated from a session when you're going to create fatigue anyway from work or your lifestyle. It becomes more important to worry about fatigue and its management when you're training with a high frequency, especially compound movements. Now, if you're doing a high frequency approach like 5x5, starting strength, or mad cow, for example, where you're squatting 2-3 times a week, then yes, you have to be careful and considerate of the work you're doing outside of the squats so that it doesn't negatively affect that next session, therefore ruin the kind of progression and the momentum that you can generate. But there are also programs that have high frequency where you need fatigue. Fatigue is the reason that you see results. Like the Smolov base mesocycle, for example. Some of the best gains you'll ever see on the squat, and it has you squatting 4 times a week. The fatigue is huge. You cannot possibly, push through that program without insane levels of fatigue being generated. But lo and behold, after you let the fatigue clear, you rest 4, 5, 6 days after the completion of the cycle, your squat goes up, your legs are bigger. You're unable to express that strength gain whilst you're fatigued, but it doesn't mean that you're not making progress. People get caught up on this. It's a mistake. It's just something that's always there that you can kind of manage, and you're going to have varying levels of success in doing so. You can't avoid it. Now, if you're training with a low frequency, it's not really something you need to worry about. If you're doing a traditional bro split, surely you're telling me that you then have to worry about fatigue and the amount of soreness that you're going to generate in that session until you train it again the next week. Now, the argument that these people would make would be that high frequency training is more effective. I don't believe that. I think generally, by and large, overall, in terms of the muscle mass gained, you're probably going to see very similar sort of returns in your progress. There may be some advantages to higher frequency training due to the slightly quicker strength progression, but then again, you're going to get better at that skill of lifting. And again, we use the squat as an example. If you're squatting 3 times a week, you're going to get better at that movement. And a lot of the gains in strength that you're going to see from that are because of that, not necessarily increases in your muscle mass. So it can be a little bit misleading. Big reason why I program full body for a lot of my clients is not because I think it's exponentially better or more effective than, say, a bro split. It just means that it brings down the number of training days. You know, they only have to go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week as opposed to 4, 5 or 6. There's massive benefit in there. I think all things considered, results are going to be more dependent upon the training intensity, the amount of work which you're doing, which of course can be spread out over more sessions or less sessions depending on your time availability, and generally your mindset and kind of how much you put into this, you know, effort-wise. I'm sure you've got some questions about my training, what I'm actually doing here during this session, which you can leave in the comment section and I'll be happy to answer. I will be uploading more videos showing training content in the near future. I just wanted to address the fatigue thing because it's just been bugging me recently. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Stay tuned for the next one. Stay strong and I'll see you soon.